My father threatened to cut off my tuition if I didn't attend my golden sister's wedding, so I showed up, handed him a check paying back every penny he'd ever given me, and walked out. 3 months later, when my success went viral in the media, they came crawling back. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please hit that subscribe button. This is a story about the invisible daughter who built an empire while her family wasn't looking. Trust me, every minute of this is worth your time. My name is Rebecca, and I'm 22 years old. For most of my life, I've been the backup daughter in a family that only had eyes for one person. My younger sister, Amber. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose every achievement was celebrated like a national holiday while I existed in the shadows, working 3 jobs and studying until dawn just to prove I mattered. Spoiler alert, they never noticed. You're going to that wedding whether you like it or not, Rebecca. Miss it and I'm done paying for your education. You hear me? My father's voice crackled through the phone, sharp and final. I sat in my apartment in Portland, Oregon, staring at the acceptance letter on my desk, the one nobody in my family knew existed. It was for a graduate program in environmental engineering, something I'd earned entirely on my own merit, just like everything else in my life that they'd never bothered to ask about. The wedding my father was threatening me about was Amber's big day. She was marrying Cameron, some guy from a wealthy family who worked in commercial real estate. I'd met him exactly twice, and both times he'd looked through me like I was part of the furniture. They were perfect for each other in that way. Both so self-absorbed they could barely see past their own reflections. Dad, I have exams that week, I said, even though it was a lie. I'd already graduated 3 weeks earlier. Summa cum laude with a degree in environmental engineering. I'd walked across that stage with honors, been named valedictorian of my class, and accepted a job offer starting at $110,000 a year. None of them knew because I hadn't told them. I'd stopped sharing my accomplishments with my family years ago when I realized they didn't care. Exams can wait, he snapped. Your sister's wedding happens once. You think your mother and I struggled to put you through school so you could skip family obligations? That line made me laugh, though I kept it silent. Struggled? They'd paid my first semester of tuition 4 years ago and held it over my head ever since, like they'd bought me a palace. After that first semester, I'd taken out loans, worked 3 part-time jobs, and applied for every scholarship I could find. I'd paid my own way through college while they threw money at Amber's sorority fees, spring break trips, and designer wardrobe. But they didn't know that. They thought they still had control over me. I'll think about it, I said. You'll do more than think about it. You'll be there in a dress with a smile on your face, or you can forget about me writing another tuition check. Your choice. He hung up before I could respond. I set my phone down and looked around my small apartment. It wasn't much. A studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom that sometimes smelled like the neighbors cooking, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every book had been paid for with money I'd earned myself. My family had no idea I'd been financially independent for years. The threat about tuition was laughable. There was no tuition left to pay. I'd finished my degree, graduated at the top of my class, and landed a position at Morrison Environmental Systems, one of the top environmental engineering firms in the Pacific Northwest. I was set to start in 2 weeks, right after Amber's wedding, which I had zero intention of attending. But my father didn't know that. Neither did my mother. And Amber? She probably didn't even know I existed half the time. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the family group chat. It was full of messages about the wedding. Flower arrangements, seating charts, dress fittings, rehearsal dinner plans. My mother had sent approximately 400 photos of Amber in various white gowns, each one accompanied by gushing commentary about how stunning she looked, how lucky Cameron was, how this was the happiest day of their lives. Not once had anyone asked me how I was doing. Not once had anyone acknowledged that I was finishing my final year of college. When I'd mentioned my graduation date a month ago, my mother had responded with, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to Amber's bachelorette party. I'd stopped expecting anything different years ago, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. The night before Amber's wedding, I made a decision. I was going to attend, but not in the way they expected. I got dressed in a simple navy dress, nothing fancy, nothing that would draw attention. I drove to the venue, a historic mansion on the outskirts of Portland with manicured gardens and elegant architecture. The parking lot was full of expensive cars. I found a spot in the back and sat there for a moment, steeling myself. In my purse was an envelope. Inside that envelope was a check for exactly $4,780. The exact amount my parents had paid for my first semester of college 4 years ago. I'd calculated it down to the penny. Tuition, fees, books, everything they'd ever given me, plus 4 years of compound interest. I was about to return their investment and walk away from this family forever. I stepped out of my car and walked into the venue. The ceremony was already underway. I slipped into the back row, watching as Amber and Cameron exchanged vows. My mother was crying in the front row. My father stood beside her, looking proud. Neither of them had noticed I'd arrived. The ceremony ended. People moved toward the reception hall. I waited until the crowd thinned, then approached my father. He was talking to someone about business, gesturing with a glass of champagne. "Dad," I said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" He turned, surprised to see me. "Rebecca, you made it. Good. Your mother was worried you'd actually skip." "I have something for you," I said, pulling the envelope from my purse. "What's this?" He opened it, confusion crossing his face when he saw the check. "I don't understand." "That's every penny you ever spent on my education," I said calmly. "Plus interest. Consider your investment returned." "What are you talking about?" "Rebecca, this is ridiculous." "No, what's ridiculous is you threatening to cut off tuition that you haven't paid in 4 years. What's ridiculous is acting like you sacrificed for me when I've been funding my own education since freshman year. What's ridiculous is treating me like I'm a burden while throwing money at Amber like she's some kind of investment property." My father's face turned red. "Lower your voice. You're making a scene." "Good. Maybe someone should finally notice I exist." My mother appeared beside him, her expression concerned. "Rebecca, what's going on? Why are you being so dramatic?" I turned to her. "I'm not being dramatic, Mom. I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm telling you exactly how I feel. I've spent 22 years watching you celebrate every tiny thing Amber does while completely ignoring everything I've accomplished. And I'm done." "You're done?" My father's voice was rising now. "You're done? We put you through college. We supported you. We gave you opportunities. You paid for 1 semester," I said. 1. "And you've held it over my head like a weapon ever since. Meanwhile, I worked 3 jobs, took out loans, and graduated with highest honors. But you wouldn't know that because you never asked." "Wait," my mother said. "You graduated?" 3 weeks ago. Summa cum laude. Valedictorian of my class. I also have a job lined up that pays more than either of you ever made. But I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't care." The crowd around us had gone quiet. People were staring. Amber appeared at the edge of the circle, her wedding dress trailing behind her. "What's happening? Why is everyone looking at us?" "I'm leaving," I said, "and I wanted to tell you that I'm done. Done pretending I'm part of this family. Done being invisible. Done letting you treat me like I don't matter." My mother reached out like she was going to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Rebecca, you're being ridiculous. You can't just leave. Watch me." I turned and started walking toward the exit. My father called after me, his voice sharp and commanding. "Rebecca, get back here right now." I didn't stop. I kept walking, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, but my steps steady. Behind me, I could hear my mother's voice, high-pitched and frantic, saying something about how embarrassing this was, how I was ruining everything. But I wasn't ruining anything. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. I made it to my car and sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me expected my father to come storming after me, to demand I come back, to threaten me with something new. But he didn't. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the venue and my family behind. As I drove back toward Portland, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger, freedom. I'd spent so long trying to earn my parents' approval, trying to prove I was worth their attention. And for what? They were never going to see me the way I wanted them to. But here's the thing, I didn't need them to. I'd built a life without their help. I'd earned my degree, landed my job, and proven to myself that I was capable and strong. Their opinion of me didn't change any of that. Still, there was a small nagging thought in the back of my mind. They didn't know about my graduation. They didn't know about my job. They didn't know what I'd accomplished. Part of me wanted them to find out, to see exactly what they'd dismissed, what they'd overlooked. But another part of me wondered if it even mattered. Would it change anything? Would they suddenly realize they'd been wrong about me? Or would they just find a way to downplay it, to make it seem less important than Amber's wedding or Cameron's job or whatever else they decided was worth celebrating? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that I'd taken the first step toward cutting them out of my life. And as terrifying as that felt, it also felt right. The week after I left Amber's wedding, my phone exploded with messages. My mother called 17 times in 3 days. My father sent increasingly angry texts demanding I explain myself. Amber left voicemails that started out confused and quickly turned accusatory. I ignored all of them. Instead, I focused on preparing for my new job. I spent my days researching Morrison environmental systems, reviewing the projects I'd be working on, and organizing my apartment. I bought professional clothes, set up a home office space, and tried to convince myself that cutting off my family had been the right decision. Most of the time, I believed it. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, doubts crept in. Had I overreacted? Should I have just sucked it up and attended the wedding? Was I being petty and vindictive? Then I'd remember the way my father had looked at me when I handed him that check. Not with understanding or pride, but with confusion and irritation, like I'd interrupted something important. My first day at Morrison Systems was everything I'd hoped for. The office was modern and bright, filled with people who were passionate about environmental sustainability. My supervisor, Dr. Patricia Chen, was a renowned expert in water resource management who'd published dozens of papers. She welcomed me warmly and immediately put me to work on a major project, the Portland Sustainability Initiative, a comprehensive plan to redesign the city's water infrastructure, implement green spaces to manage stormwater runoff, and create educational programs about environmental conservation. It was exactly the kind of work I'd dreamed of doing when I first chose environmental engineering as my major. For the first few weeks, I threw myself into the work. Long hours, detailed research, complex calculations. It felt good to be challenged, to be valued for my skills rather than compared to someone else. My colleague Marcus became a friend. We'd grab lunch together and talk about projects, about our backgrounds, about life outside work. He was easy to talk to, never judgmental. One day over coffee, he asked about my family. Are they proud of you? Landing this job is a huge deal. I hesitated, then decided to be honest. They don't actually know I have this job, or that I graduated. We're not really speaking right now. Marcus raised his eyebrows but didn't pry. Instead, he said, well, for what it's worth, we're all really impressed with your work. You're already making a huge impact on the project. That meant more to me than he knew. A month into my job, I came home to find an envelope slipped under my door. My heart sank when I recognized my mother's handwriting on the front. Inside was a card with a generic message about family and forgiveness. Below the printed text, my mother had written, Rebecca, please come home. We miss you and we love you. Whatever issues we have, we can work through them together. You're our daughter, and we want you in our lives. Please call me. Love, Mom. I stared at the card for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that maybe things could be different, but another part of me knew better. This wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement of how they'd treated me. It was just a plea for me to come back and pretend everything was fine. I set the card aside and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept replaying memories. The time I won a math competition and my parents forgot to pick me up from school because they were at Amber's dance recital. The Christmas when I got practical gifts like socks and a calculator while Amber got a new laptop and designer purse. The countless dinners where I sat silently while everyone discussed Amber's life. And then I thought about the future I was building for myself. The job that challenged and excited me. The independence I'd fought for, the respect I was earning from colleagues who valued my skills and contributions. I didn't need my family to validate me anymore. I'd learned to validate myself, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. The next morning, I woke up to find a text from Amber. Mom told me she sent you a card. I know you're mad, but please at least consider talking to them. They really do miss you. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I got ready for the day and went for a run, trying to clear my head. When I got back, I finally replied. I appreciate you reaching out, but I need more time. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet. Her response came quickly. I understand. Just know that I'm here if you need me. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. Maybe Amber was genuinely trying. Maybe not. Time would tell. The following week, I dove deeper into the Portland Sustainability Project. The scope was massive, redesigning the city's water infrastructure to reduce waste and improve efficiency. Implementing green spaces to manage stormwater runoff, creating educational programs about environmental conservation. One afternoon, while I was reviewing cost estimates, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this Rebecca? Yes. Who's this? This is Cameron, Amber's husband. We met briefly at... Well, we've met a couple times. I sat up straighter, surprised. What do you want? I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes? Cameron's voice was hesitant, almost nervous. It was strange hearing him sound uncertain. Every time I'd met him before, he'd been confident to the point of arrogance. I'm listening, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Look, I know things are complicated with your family right now. Amber told me what happened at the wedding. And I think there's something you should know. He paused. Your father borrowed money from me. $20,000. He said it was for business expenses. that he'd pay me back within 3 months. That was 6 months ago, and he still hasn't paid me back a single dollar. My stomach dropped. What? I confronted him about it last week, and he finally admitted the truth. His business is failing. Has been for over a year. He's been taking out loans, borrowing from friends, doing everything he can to keep up appearances. But it's not working. The business is going under. I couldn't speak for a moment. My father's business. He'd always talked about it like it was thriving, like he was so successful. Does my mother know? I don't think so. And Amber definitely doesn't. Your father made me promise not to tell anyone, but I think you deserve to know the truth, especially after everything that happened. Why are you telling me this? Because I think your family has been lying to you for a long time, and I think you deserve better than that. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, processing this information. My father's business was failing. He'd borrowed money he couldn't pay back. He'd been maintaining this facade of success while everything crumbled behind the scenes. And he'd threatened to cut off my tuition, money he didn't even have, to force me to attend Amber's wedding and maintain the illusion that everything was perfect. I felt angry, betrayed, but also vindicated. They'd treated me like I was the failure, like I was the one who needed their help to survive. But all along, they'd been the ones struggling. They'd been the ones living beyond their means, borrowing money they couldn't pay back, putting on a show for everyone while their world fell apart. And I'd built something real, something solid, something that didn't depend on lies or borrowed money or maintaining appearances. 3 months after I'd walked out of Amber's wedding, something changed. The Portland Sustainability Initiative won the city council contract. It was a huge victory for Morrison Systems and for our team. Dr. Chen selected me to participate in several media interviews. Local newspapers wanted to cover the project. A business journal did a feature on young professionals making an impact in environmental engineering. One article included my photo and a brief bio mentioning that I'd graduated valedictorian from my engineering program. It was published in the Sunday edition of the major Portland newspaper. The day it was published, I received a text from Amber. Mom saw the article. She's freaking out. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Sure enough, an hour later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened to the message later. Rebecca, I saw the article about your project. I had no idea you were working on something so important. Your father and I are very proud of you. I know things have been difficult, but we'd love to see you and talk about everything. Please call me back. I deleted the message without responding. 2 days later, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a framed copy of the newspaper article featuring me, along with a card from my parents. Rebecca, we're so proud of everything you've accomplished. We always knew you were capable of great things. We hope you'll give us a chance to be part of your success. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the card for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. They were proud of me now that my success was public, now that they could brag about it to their friends. But where were they when I was struggling through college? Where were they when I graduated with honors? Where were they during the years I spent working multiple jobs and studying late into the night? They wanted to be part of my success, but they'd never been part of my struggle. I put the frame in a closet and threw the card away. Then, 4 months after the wedding, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was my mother, and her voice sounded strained. Rebecca, honey, it's Mom. I need to talk to you about something important. What is it? It's your father. He's had a heart attack. My stomach dropped. What? When? This afternoon. He collapsed at the office. They rushed him to the hospital and he's stable now, but the doctors say he needs to make some major lifestyle changes. Less stress, better diet, more rest. I sank onto my couch, processing this information. Despite everything, he was still my father. The thought of him having a heart attack scared me more than I wanted to admit. Is he going to be okay? They think so. But Rebecca, we need to talk about his business. With him in the hospital, someone needs to step in and help manage things, at least temporarily. And with everything that's been happening, I thought maybe you could help. No? Rebecca, please? I know things have been difficult between us, but your father needs help. The business is struggling, and if someone doesn't step in, we could lose everything. Then hire someone or ask Amber. Amber doesn't know anything about business management, and we can't afford to hire someone. You're the only one who has the skills and knowledge to help us through this. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull of guilt and obligation. This was exactly what they'd always done. Waited until there was a crisis, then expected me to fix it. Mom, I'm sorry Dad is sick. I really am, but I can't drop everything to save his business. I have my own career, my own responsibilities. Your career can wait. This is family. Family works both ways. You can't ignore me for years and then expect me to come running when you need something. We never ignored you, Rebecca. We've always loved you and supported you. That's not true, and you know it. You paid for 1 semester of college and held it over my head for 4 years. You dismissed my achievements, overlooked my struggles, and made it clear that Amber was the only one who mattered. And now that you need something from me, suddenly I'm important. That's not fair. We did the best we could. Maybe. But your best wasn't good enough, and I'm not going to sacrifice my life to fix your problems. She was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had turned cold. So that's it. You're just going to abandon us when we need you most. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting boundaries. If you need help with Dad's business, hire a consultant. If you need emotional support, call Amber. But don't ask me to give up everything I've worked for to bail you out. Fine. I can see we can't count on you. I'll figure something else out. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, feeling shaken. Part of me wondered if I'd made the wrong choice, if I was being too harsh. But another part of me knew I'd done the right thing. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for people who only valued me when they needed something. The next morning, I got up early and put on my best professional outfit, a charcoal gray suit with a cream blouse. I styled my hair carefully, applied minimal makeup, and checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked confident, capable, like someone who belonged in a room full of city officials and business leaders. At the office, our team gathered for a final run-through of the presentation. Dr. Chen gave us a pep talk about staying calm and confident, answering questions directly, and remembering that we had the best proposal. You've all done incredible work on this project, she said. Now let's show the council why Morrison Systems is the right choice. The presentation went perfectly. We answered every question with precision and confidence. When it was over, the council members thanked us and said they'd make their decision within the week. 3 days later, the announcement came. The contract would be awarded to Morrison Environmental Systems. Their proposal demonstrated the most comprehensive approach to environmental sustainability, the most realistic timeline, and the strongest technical expertise. We'd won. The conference room erupted in applause. Dr. Chen grabbed my hand and squeezed it, her eyes shining with excitement. Marcus was grinning ear to ear. The next few weeks were a blur of contract negotiations, project planning meetings, and press coverage. The Portland Sustainability Initiative was big news in the local environmental community, and several media outlets wanted to interview the team behind it. Dr. Chen selected me to participate in a few of these interviews, and I found myself being quoted in the newspaper and featured in a local business journal article about young professionals making an impact. One article included my photo and a brief bio mentioning that I'd graduated valedictorian from my engineering program. The exposure was incredible, but it also meant my family couldn't ignore my success anymore. That weekend, I met Amber for coffee as promised. She looked different somehow, less polished, more genuine. We sat in a quiet corner of a cafe and talked for 2 hours about everything: our childhood, our parents, our different experiences growing up in the same house. I think I was in denial for a long time, Amber admitted. It was easier to believe Mom and Dad were perfect than to acknowledge how unfair things were. But after everything that's happened, Cameron's loan, Dad's heart attack, finding out about the business, I can't pretend anymore. It's hard to see your parents as flawed human beings instead of infallible authority figures. Yeah. And I feel guilty too. Guilty that I benefited from their favoritism. Guilty that I didn't stand up for you. Guilty that I just accepted everything without questioning it. You were a kid, Amber. You can't blame yourself for how they chose to treat us. Maybe not, but I can take responsibility for how I treat you now. She looked at me seriously. I want you to know that I see you. Really see you. And I'm impressed as hell by what you've accomplished. The project, your job, everything. You did it all on your own, and that's incredible. Thank you. That means a lot. We made plans to meet for lunch the following week, and when we parted ways, I felt hopeful. Maybe Amber and I could build something real, something based on honesty rather than obligation. A few days later, I received an email from my father. Rebecca, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now, but I'd like to talk. Not about the business or any expectations, just to talk. If you're willing, I'd like to meet for coffee. No pressure. Your father. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the distance I'd worked so hard to establish, but another part of me was curious. I replied, I'm open to having coffee and talking, but I need you to understand that things can't go back to how they were. If we're going to have a relationship moving forward, it needs to be honest and equal. Let me know when you're available. His response came the next day. I understand. How about next Saturday at 10? There's a cafe near my house called Morning Grounds. I'll be there. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, my stomach full of butterflies. When my father walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight. His face was drawn, and he moved carefully, like someone still recovering from serious illness. We ordered coffee and sat down at a table by the window. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You're welcome. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the heart attack, about my life, my choices, my priorities, and I realized I've made a lot of mistakes, especially with you." I waited, not sure where this was going. "Your mother and I put too much pressure on Amber to be perfect and not enough attention on you. We took you for granted, assumed you'd be fine because you were independent and self-sufficient, but that wasn't fair to you. You deserved better." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't address all the specific ways they'd hurt me, but it was honest, and it was a start. "I appreciate you saying that. I also want you to know that I read the articles about your project. I had no idea you were doing such important work. I'm impressed, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to support you along the way. I didn't tell you about it because I didn't think you'd care." "I know, and that's on me." He took a sip of his coffee. "I don't expect you to forgive me or to suddenly want a close relationship, but I hope we can start fresh, maybe slowly build something better." We talked for another hour about his retirement plans, the business sale, and his health. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of tension, but it felt real in a way our conversations never had before. When we parted ways, I didn't feel the weight of expectation I'd always carried around my parents. I felt lighter, freer, like I'd finally let go of needing their approval. In the months that followed, my parents faced the full consequences of their choices. The business sold for far less than my father had hoped, barely covering a fraction of their debts. They had to file for bankruptcy, which meant losing their house and most of their possessions. They moved into a modest apartment and started over with almost nothing. My father took a part-time consulting job to supplement his small pension, and my mother went back to work as an administrative assistant. The lifestyle they'd worked so hard to project, the successful business owner, the comfortable suburban home, the illusion of financial stability, crumbled completely. Friends who'd admired their supposed generosity and success quietly distanced themselves when the truth came out. Amber helped where she could, but she and Cameron had their own lives to build and couldn't bankroll my parents' recovery. As for me, I continued moving forward. I started the graduate program, excelled in my new role at Morrison Systems, and slowly built a relationship with Amber based on honesty rather than obligation. My father and I met for coffee occasionally, carefully reconstructing something that resembled a relationship. My mother took longer to come around, but eventually she stopped trying to manipulate me and started actually listening when we talked. Looking back on that day at Amber's wedding, the day I handed my father that envelope and walked away, I realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my worth, refusing to be controlled, and choosing myself for the first time in my life. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been mine. And that made all the difference. I'm Rebecca. I'm 23 years old now. I have a master's degree in environmental engineering. I lead major sustainability projects that are changing how cities think about infrastructure. I have a relationship with my sister that's built on respect rather than rivalry. My parents and I talk occasionally. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And I learned something important along the way. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up, who values you, who sees you for who you really are. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's building a life so successful, so fulfilling, so genuine that their absence doesn't diminish it. That's exactly what I did. And I've never looked back.